Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question comes to us from a viewer. Thanks to Liam for this one. Amy controls a Kumano faces Kakkazan, and its Chapter 2 ability has just resolved. She doesn't control any creatures, and she plays an Heir of the Ancient Fang. Does the Heir of the Ancient Fang enter the battlefield with one counter or two? Alright, so I really like this question because it goes through a lot of really interesting stuff related to replacement effects. And in order to answer it, we're going to need to know a lot of information ranging the entire gamut from introductory material to some really advanced topics. Ready? Let's get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about is a little bit of general information about how replacement effects work. Anytime anything is going to happen in the game has to check to see if any replacement effects want to modify what's about to happen. And if there are, then it's going to apply that replacement effect, and now a new modified event is about to happen in the game. So the game has to check again to see if there's any replacement effects that want to modify that event, and it keeps on going through that process until we get to a point where there's no replacement effects that want to modify the event that's about to happen. A couple of kind of tangential points here. First of all, if we're in a spot where multiple replacement effects want to apply to the same event, then the affected player gets to choose one of them and that one applies. Second, if we're in a spot where a replacement effect wants to apply to an event and it's already applied to an earlier version of that event, then it can't apply again. You can only apply to an event one time, and that rule holds true even if the event gets modified. So that prevents some replacement effects from continually modifying the same event and keeping the game in an infinite loop. Neither one of those points is really going to be that applicable to this situation here, but I wanted to at least touch on those because I figured some people might be curious about them. Alright, now let's take a look at what we've just learned and apply it to the situation that we introduced at the beginning of the episode. So, even if we don't control any modified creatures at the very beginning when the Heir of the Ancient Fang is about to enter the battlefield, that's okay as long as we can manage to somehow get a modified creature during the process of replacement effects modifying the event of Heir of the Ancient Fang entering the battlefield. So, right out of the gate, it looks like maybe this could work. Now let's take a close look at the rules involving how enters the battlefield replacement effects, such as Heir of the Ancient Fangs, are going to apply. And yes, there is, in fact, an entire rule dedicated to exactly this topic. And it's one of the biggest, longest, and densest rules that there is in the entire CR. So go ahead and take it all in for a moment, and I'll kind of try to point out some stuff that is going to be relevant to what we're talking about here. The first thing is that when we're deciding which replacement effects apply and how those replacement effects apply, then we can take into account the characteristics of the object as it would exist on the battlefield. Now, already we've got a really big red flag, and this is actually kind of a showstopper here, because as it turns out, whether something is modified or not does not count as a characteristic. There's a specific list of stuff that is a characteristic, and whether something has counters on it or not actually does not appear on that list. And so right out of the gate, we can say that this isn't going to work. However, maybe we forgot about that, or maybe we had some other ideas that we wanted to explore first. And so I definitely do want to talk about another even bigger problem that we're about to encounter, because that one actually ends up being relevant to a whole lot of different replacement effect types of questions that are similar to this one. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is, while we are able to look at the characteristics of the Heir of the Ancient Fang while it's on the battlefield, and imagine what those characteristics would be while we're deciding what replacement effect should apply, we've still got one very big problem, which is that the Heir of the Ancient Fang isn't yet on the battlefield, right? We already talked about a little bit before how when a replacement effect is applied, it's actually applying immediately before the event that it modifies has actually taken place. So while this stuff is all going on, we definitely do not control any modified creatures because we don't control any creatures at all yet. The Heir of the Ancient Fang is not on the battlefield yet, so therefore we can't really say that we control that creature. If you're interested in a little bit deeper dive into this types of situation, I really encourage everyone to take a look at my video that I made where I talked about how Urborg interacts with Isolated Chapel, which has a very similar theme. Now, I was really sad when I figured out that this situation wasn't going to work and we were only going to get 1+1+1 counter. I really wanted everyone to be able to see a situation where this sort of rules would work and produce this sort of desired outcome, so I came up with one that doesn't use any cards from the new set, but I still think it's kind of fun to talk about. And we'll be able to see a side-by-side comparison to maybe think about what went wrong and help guide us if we have something like this that comes up in the future. So let's imagine that we have a Bramblewood Paragon out, and we're going to play a Metallic Mimic, and we're going to make it be a warrior. Would the Metallic Mimic enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter from the Bramblewood Paragon? Alright, so first of all, I want everybody to think about what replacement effects actually apply to the Metallic Mimic entering the battlefield. And of course the one where you get to choose a creature type, that's definitely going to apply. However, we want to take a look at the one from Bramblewood Paragon a little bit more closely. And let's notice that at this time, we see a shapeshifter entering the battlefield, and not a warrior. So the Bramblewood Paragon is not actually going to be interested in this event. Not yet anyway. So we only have one replacement effect that's going to apply, so we're going to apply that one. And now, after we have applied this replacement effect, we're going to see if any new replacement effects might want to apply to this new and modified event that's now about to happen in the game. And remembering that rule that we brought up earlier, we are allowed to take into account any continuous effects from the permanent's own abilities that might modify its characteristics while it's on the battlefield. So we can see something really interesting here, which is that the Bramblewood Paragon is going to look at the Metallic Mimic and see that it has a continuous effect that's going to make it the chosen creature type, in this case, warrior, and because the Bramblewood Paragon sees that the Metallic Mimic is going to look like a warrior while it's on the battlefield, now we do get to take that into account, and we can say that the Bramblewood Paragon replacement effect is applicable to this event now. So that means we would get the +1/+1 counter in this instance. Now that we've got a couple of examples, one that works and one that doesn't, let's take a look at these side by side and see if we can identify where we went wrong in the first one. And if we take a look at what the Bramblewood Paragon's replacement effect says, we can maybe paraphrase it a little bit so it would sound something like, if a creature that would look like a warrior while it's on the battlefield would enter the battlefield, it gets an extra +1/+1 counter. Whereas if you were to take a look at what the replacement effect on the Heir of the Ancient Fang said, well, it would maybe look something more like, as this is entering the battlefield, if you already control a creature that's modified, then I'll get a counter also. And so that subtle kind of distinction is indeed enough to make the answer change from yes to no in this kind of situation. Whew, that was a lot of really hardcore and dense rule stuff. Give yourselves a big pat on the back if you were able to follow it all the way through. This is a really tough topic, and even a lot of high-level judges with really excellent rules knowledge have been known to miss questions about this from time to time. Hopefully, if a situation comes up in a game that you're a part of, this information will give you the confidence to make a determination about whether something would or would not apply. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.